Hello, everyone. Today we are looking at Deleuze and Guattari's Anti-Oedipus. Uh, now, this work is more like Karl Marx's Das Kapital, okay? So these guys are not really, uh, I wouldn't think that they are too valuable for psychology, uh, in the way that they don't really give major treatment methods, but they shine light into the fact that societal factors like capitalism can actually influence a person's well being and their psyche. And this is why they're actually important. So let's start. So, the authors, Deleuze was a philosopher, Guattari was a psychoanalyst and a political activist, and they were working in a clinic called Laborde, which this clinic was apparently rotating staff and patient roles like cooking and cleaning to prevent harmful institutional structures. So, as I said, these guys are not very keen on the hierarchical layout of the current world. So, what they did is they created this clinic that made it so that there was no hierarchy between the doctors and the patients. For example, a schizophrenic would feel more at ease because he didn't really have to say anything to anyone because they were the same level as the doctors. I mean, everyone was doing every job within the clinic. The patients were cleaning, the doctors were cleaning. It was a very nice system, in my opinion. And they also saw that patients were showing improvement when they were not restricted to a hierarchical environment. Now, historical atmosphere, they wrote this book during a political uprising in France, an era marked by intense dissatisfaction with state authority, hierarchy, and the bourgeois family structure. Now, during these times, what happened was France was doing like a month long, protests where workers were, shutting down factories, etc. But something happened and people started to go back to their old ways. What looked like an entire change of the current status quo system, which was a capitalistic system, suddenly disappeared. So these guys wanted to know why this was happening. So it's not a cautious revision of Freud or a standard clinical model. It is an aggressive philosophical and political intervention. It's asking why the revolution failed and why people remain invested in their own subjugation. Now, the first concept that they teach us is that desire does not lack anything. Now, traditional frameworks view desire as a yearning for something missing. We call a lack. For example, Lacan was viewing this as a split between the person, the mirror, and yourself. But this guy does not say that these people, DNG, I will refer to them, DNG say that desire is a purely productive force. What does this mean? This means that we desire purely because we are sort of engineered to do something. We are production machines. We want to produce things. And the reason for why we want to produce is because our bodies are working, our neurons are firing, and let's say we have this potential energy that needs to be released from the system. And we release this energy from our system by producing things. For example, a programmer writing code isn't filling an internal void, so it's not trying to fill in a lack, but it's actively creating new connections between logic, hardware, and social utility. Now, connections between things is also a very important part of DNG. They say desire is an active process that links bodies, technologies, institutions, and routines, produces social realities and attachments rather than just compensating for absences. They are reiterating that it's not lack. So they are saying that traditional psychoanalysis, it's treating the unconscious like a theater stage where things happen and all you can do is try to look at them and try to figure out what they mean. There's hidden symbolic meanings and family dramas, and they're represented, this Oedipus complex, and your family being the source of all of your issues is the most prominent idea in psychoanalysis of Freud. But they're saying, no, the unconscious is more like a factory. It does not merely represent something, but it's actually working. It does active production, and it connects things, and it creates flows. And it doesn't just do hidden meanings. So, to get more further into this, we will look into desiring machines and partial objects. So, they are saying that our desires are actually part of a bigger system. Our desire makes us connect to this larger system. It makes us connect to things, and it makes us establish connections. Now, these desiring machines, the so-called desiring machines, are not little gadgets, of course. We don't have quick little machines inside us. But they are real, functioning systems that produce a flow or perform an action when connected to another system. Now, they're just saying machines because machines do things because they're designed to do them. So, for example, we have this mouth machine that connects to the breast machine and it flows of milk, which is connected to desire. Or a worker is connecting to a factory, which is also a machine, flow of labor / production. Hand connects to pocket and stones, it's the circuit of movement and arrangement. But there are also the concepts of partial objects versus object relations. Melanie Klein uses partial objects to map out early family-oriented developmental stages, like the bad breast or the good breast. But D&J say that partial objects are just working parts of desiring machines. They're just elements within a larger circuit of connection, and they're not mere symbols in a family story. I don't really understand what this means, but I guess partial objects or things that you believe are kind of connected to you just are part of the cogs and wiring within a machine that we call life. A central target of the book is Oedipalization, which is this. So there is politics, we have creativity, we have change, we have economy, we have knowledge, we have community, we have expansive social desires. But psychoanalysis, Freud's psychoanalysis, tries to cram these down into the Oedipus complex, which just forms this triangular key that supposedly has the answer to all of our psychological problems, which is not really realistic if you think about it for more than 5 minutes. So they don't deny that families exist. Of course, we have families, but families are not really the source of everything. They are just a product of social and economic forces. So the environment around us, the political environment around us, just create this family dynamic we know. Internal family roles are shaped by broader entities like labor laws, markets, and gender norms. So the bigger environment creates these family units. And in traditional psychoanalysis, there is the misinterpretation of social suffering. I guess in the past, if a person was feeling burnt out because they were not being paid, they were living a horrible life, they were made to just work overtime every day without extra pay, they could not see their families, they would go to Freud, and Freud would say, yes, you probably had a mother, you had a problem with your mother as a child, or you were oppressed by your father. So they say no. I mean, this is not the only case. They argue that we must look at how institutions and social expectations are organizing that suffering that this person is experiencing. If a worker suffers from exhaustion and financial insecurity, it's probably because their job is treating them like shit, or the state is not helping them. So when we look at this is also important. Schizophrenia, it's like their main gig because they also introduce schizoanalysis in the future. Schizophrenia, they define as the schizophrenic process, which is a movement that undoes rigid social codes and fixed identities, allowing desire to escape established territories. Now, when you think of them as anti-capitalists, basically, thinking in the ideology of DNJ, they believe that being a schizophrenic is the ultimate escape for what capitalism is trying to shove down your throat. Why is this? Because a schizophrenic does not really care about how much money he makes, or how much likes he will get, or how much he will be, what is it? How much he will need to work this day to reach that deadline or something like that. He doesn't care about any of that. So his desire, or her desire, the schizophrenic's desire, is purely limitless. It's not really constrained by the environment around them, but it's only constrained by what their mind wants to do. So it's the ultimate escape from the matrix, the blue pill, I think, or the red pill, I don't know. But it's the escape from the established system because you've essentially gone mad. But, of course, an important distinction to be made is that it's not a celebration of illness. They don't romanticize actual psychotic collapse because it is a clinical suffering and it's devastating. So, how does schizoanalysis work in practice? So, instead of asking what hidden childhood meaning does this have when presented with a problem, they say, how does this arrangement work? And what does it connect the subject to? Because, as we said, it's all about connections and desiring machines and other stuff. So, if a patient dreams of a complex network of pipes and liquids, a schizoanalyst wouldn't interpret the liquid as a repressed sexual drive or maternal lack. Instead, they would identify the specific couplings and breaks in the flow to see how the desire functions. This sentence does not have any meaning behind it. Yeah. So, when applying it to burnout, so let's say a worker is burnt out, schizoanalysis does not care about an unresolved electric complexes, the ones that I talked about before, maybe not being able to handle hierarchy, or because you had a problem with your father or something. But it focuses on the social machines, corporate hierarchy, surveillance, productivity metrics that capture and exhaust the worker's energy. I support this. This is good. So, it also deeply explores how economic life and psychic life are intimately entangled. Why do men fight for their servitude as stubbornly as though it were their salvation? Translation: why do people fight to become slaves as if it would save them from becoming slaves? Kinda. So, they believe that the reason for this is because domination isn't just enforced by police or false beliefs, but people become effectively invested in the very structures that constrain them. They become invested in them. So, capitalism does this very cool things. First one being deterritorialization. What is it? You have these traditional structures that have been working until until now. You have these structures that have been working that are nice, family structures, maybe values that you have, maybe measures of success. But what capitalism does is, first of all, it breaks it down. So none of that is there. First of all, it makes you unable to achieve those. It makes you unable to produce in those areas. So now you're a producing machine that is stuck in a vacuum. You don't know what to do. So what does capitalism do? It offers you a solution: reterritorialization. It creates markets, commodities, bureaucracies, and says, okay, I know you have these freed flows that you need to invest in something, so you can invest them in my profit-based structures. Very cool. So to give an example to this, in the current world, we could give the digital culture example. We have the influencer culture and digital metrics like likes and shares. So first of all, they broke down how you value success, and then they introduced a new measure for it, that being shares, likes, subscriptions, etc. Desire is captured and organized by the algorithm's market logic and need for visibility. The algorithm. So, how do people criticize these guys? They say that it's overwhelmingly difficult to read, which was kind of their goal, but I don't like things like that. It caricatures traditional psychoanalysis, making it seem like it's worthless. It underestimates the real impact of early infancy, which it criticizes. The Oedipal complex is not anything that is the key to everything, etc. But they don't really say that it's worthless, but it underestimates the real impact and potentially romanticizes several mental distresses, like going crazy, like schizophrenia. They idealize these. But it forces an essential question. Are we treating simple symptoms by shrinking them into familiar private scripts, like the Oedipal complex? Or are we addressing the complex, massive social arrangements that truly organize our desires?